Welcome, everyone. I want to give thanks to God for your attention, for your time. I give thanks to God for those of you who are here. We are aware that some of you may be joining at some other point, but may this be a reflection that we take our servant leadership very seriously. And I am very grateful for the time that you've made. You've committed. I give thanks to God for Chris and for Lisa, who are always very committed, passionate, humble about it, and they drive this effort not alone, but they drive this effort as leaders, hoping and expecting and welcoming each of you to make this possible. For me, it's very important that we demonstrate to our community, to our families, to our parents, whether you're a screened, authorized adult volunteer or minor apprentice, however you want to understand your role, every single role matters, because every child matters as well to the Lord. So what you do and how you do it makes an impression in every child's life. And that's not to be taken lightly. We take that very seriously. The church family and the future of the church is dependent on how we nourish children and youth. So your presence, your time to tune in, we don't care for simply checking off boxes. We don't want signatures just to go on reports and dismiss and undermine the value. This is very important to us. And we want to make sure that it's safety involved, that it's safe doctrine and theology and the teaching. We're not perfect, know it all, but we are definitely dedicated and committed to be perfected by our Lord Jesus Christ. So I give thanks to God for each of you. God bless you.
All right, so welcome. Glad you guys are here. Thank you for joining us, and also thank you for everybody that will be joining us online. So this is important for us to be able to gather together, just as Vidalis has spoken about, just the fact that we are just being good stewards of what God has called us to do, and just be mindful of that. You know, our role in student and children's ministry is very important, and so we want to make sure that we we do everything that we can to protect you and also protect our kids and our church. So I want to start out with a devotional, and there is music going, and I'm hoping that it's not going on in there, but I don't think it is, so it should be fine. So, but you know, if I need to go back there and go check it. But I wanted to start out with a little devotional, and I found this devotional, and I actually really liked it. And I thought it connected really with where we are at as a ministry, and kind of just fits us as volunteers. It says this: you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. You'll fly, and I'll buy. Quid pro quo. Is that how you say it? Yeah. You buy this time, I'll buy next time. Have you ever used any of these expressions? Of course you have, right? We all do favors for favors. It's an offer to help in exchange for help. You'll give them what they want if they give you what you want. Everybody wins. We all play that game. But what we forget is that Jesus changed the rules on it. He expected us to do for others who have no ability to pay us back. You see, there's no reward in doing something for others who can pay you back. It's not really a favor if you get a return favor. Part of our Christian DNA should be to do for others who can't pay us back. It should be a part of who we are and be a regular thing we do. When Jesus was describing who got into heaven, this is what he said in Matthew 25:35-36. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you brought me together with yourselves, and welcomed and entertained and lodged me. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me with help and ministering care. I was in prison, and you came to see me. And all of these examples is what it was about helping someone out who couldn't return the favor. He went on to say that when you do something for the least among us, you've done it in him. There's no reward in helping those who can pay you back. Of course, you can still help your friends out in a quid pro quo fashion, but you can't just do that and help to be rewarded for doing good. You got your reward when they paid you back. The life Jesus is calling us to do is doing things for those who can't pay you back. In Luke 14:13, Jesus said in another way, he said, but when you give a banquet or a reception, invite the poor, the disabled, the lame, and the blind. He mentioned several times in the Gospels that we were to give those who couldn't pay us back. When you think about it, Jesus did that for us. He set the example for giving at a high cost for those who couldn't pay him back. If you accepted him as your Savior, then he paid your debt for sin in full. There's no way to repay him for that. The best thing we can do is to follow his example. Give to those who can't repay you, and don't hold it over their head. So in a way, that's what we're called to do as volunteers. We're supposed to give. We're supposed to do things in a very selfless way, right? What you're doing, your time that you committed, and the time that you've committed to the kids and youth, it takes a lot out of you, and I know it can be draining. But know that you're doing it for a greater thing, and I think both of us would agree, and I think all of us would agree that our ministry would not survive if it wasn't for y'all. And so you guys are a big part of why we do what we do. We cannot, our jobs are useless if we don't have y'all. And so thank you for being selfless and taking on a role that is not about gaining something, but to give something. And so we're thankful for you. And so she prayed for us, right? So Lisa, you want to start?
Okay. Hi. Thank you guys for being here on campus, and thank you for those who are watching online. We are going to dive right into our child protection policy. We, as a church, we're oddly a little bit more vulnerable for things to happen here. I think people on the outside and the inside know how heavily we rely on volunteers, how eager we are when someone says, hey, I'd like to volunteer. We're like, okay, great, come on in. So we want to make sure that we are being very, very diligent about going through this procedure. And thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for watching. And many of you have been with us a long time. So thank you for continuing to come to these meetings. But we want to be diligent. And even in this season of differentness, it's probably even more important that we have our guard up and that we don't let it down in this time where things are a little bit crazier in other areas as well. So if you look on that first page, which is I have it marked as the Ministry Protection Memo. It just talks a little bit about that, if you have the opportunity to look it over, just how much that youth and churches are, like Chris said, we thrive on volunteers. So thank you. We do have a few paid staff, and they go under the same training as you are as well. So thank you. We're going to go briefly through the child protection policy. There has not been any changes in the policy in the past year and a half when we last met. So that's a good thing. There's nothing new. We may briefly mention some of the COVID things as far as like right now our church is following, mask at all times and social distancing and all those things. But as far as the volunteer forms itself, there's nothing new. So we'll just be following the First Church protocols that the task force is using for those COVID protocols. And so I am going to pass it back. Oh, also too, you each have a snack bag. So thank you. Feel free to have that snack. We wish we could treat you guys to a big lunch today. If you are watching online, we have a snack bag for you too in a hard copy. So if you're near the office and you want to stop by, we will make sure we get that in your hands, just as a very, very simple way to say thank you for all you guys. Thank you for all that you do.
All right. Thank you, Lisa. So if you open to page 2, and I'm just going to talk about the red part, right? Just kind of. So you'll see a lot of things that are in red. I've forgotten how many years, but they try to, every couple of years, they'll go and reevaluate, look at the language that we've used, and we also look at, for us, is how is this working for us in our ministry? Is it actually something that we can do? And is this something that we are actually doing? And so we want to make sure that whatever we do that we have on paper here is something that we're actually practicing. And I know it's hard because I read some of these things and I'm like, I don't know if I'm doing the best job at that, right? And so we're going to go through a lot of the stuff, things that are read last year. They did a whole revision of the policy, so those things are read are the new things that happened. And we talked about it last year, but we want to make sure that we continue to refresh our minds on those things. I know there's a few things that we're probably going to skip around, but we want to highlight certain things and when we go through there, correct? So Lisa's going to start, and that's it.
All right, so who is a volunteer that should, it's a rhetorical question, that should go through this training? Well, that's going to be any of our paid staff, so our nursery staff, and then, of course, Chris and I. Any adult who supervises or assists with supervising children or youth in ministries more than 3 times a year. So certainly that includes everyone that's sitting in front of me and includes really most of you at home. So if you are volunteering with children or youth more than 3 times a year, then this is the meeting that you need to be in attendance with. So thank you. So if it is a case where every blue moon you volunteer, you don't fall under that umbrella. Again, when we talk about children, that's anyone that's under the age of 12, usually falls under my ministry. And then with youth, it's anyone between the age of 12 and really any student in high school. So even though they might have reached 18 or 19, but they're still in high school, they fall under the umbrella of youth. So also, since we are doing this meeting early this year, to all of our volunteers watching online, if you think you're going to come back into the volunteer role later on in this year, if you'd like to continue to support these ministries in that way, it's important that you go ahead, finish watching the video, and submit the paperwork that goes with that. So also, I'm going to move over to page 4. We do have some required paperwork that needs to be filled out. Now, most of you have already filled out that initial application. And if you remember, it asked for references and why you want to work with children. You don't need to fill that out every year. So if you have filled that out in the past, you're good to go. That's just something that the church has so that we can keep all of our volunteers on file. Also, many of you have already submitted the background check. So we're in the process now of seeing which ones are valid and which ones are coming due. Usually those background checks are good for 3 years. If we need you to submit a new background check, Chris and I will notify you and let you know. And again, that form's online. So no need to submit that background check until you hear from us first. So, because there's no sense in double doing it if you're already cleared. The only form that needs to be filled out today or when you finish watching this video is the one that's included in your folder, and it's also online. And it is called the, Participation Covenant Statement. So this is also, if you go online after you watch the video, where it says, like, I think online it says, like, resources, volunteer forms. Oh my goodness, I had it written down. Oh, it is number 3. It's called the Participation Statement. And what this is saying is that, hey, I attended the meeting. I was told, I was received what the policies were. So this is the one that we need back every year. So you can either submit it online, which it's right there on, send it straight through the website, or you can leave the hard copy with us. So as far as anything else, like I said, most of our volunteers, you guys have been with us a long time. You don't need to continue to submit that same paperwork. If you have any questions, of course, you can always reach out to Chris and I, and we can let you know if you're updated with that. So attendance at this training or watching online is required of all of our adult volunteers. And we like to require it of our youth volunteers as well, just so that they can be in the know and be up to date with those policies.
Are we going, where are we at now? Mentoring? I know for youth ministry, particularly with COVID, things have changed quite a bit, and I believe for Lisa it's changed quite a bit as well. And some of us are doing Zoom, some of us are doing in person, we're meeting at people's homes, we're meeting on campus, and some of these things that the changes that have happened, honestly, makes us have to relook at make sure that we're doing everything the right way and according to our policy. And so I know for student ministry particularly is, right now we are truly relying on leaders to meet with students, engage with them, do small groups, and so it's important that we kind of go through this. So we don't really do mentoring programs, but we do look at you guys as mentors, right? You guys are pouring into people's lives. Sometimes you meet with one-on-one. You'll have phone conversations one-on-one sometimes. I get it, but I just want us to go through this. I don't know if I should read through this, but I'm going to read through this. Although mentoring programs inherently promote the development of a one-on-one relationship between an adult mentor and a child youth, such programs should be conducted in a group setting in compliance with the other requirements of this policy, including that at least 2 adults be present at all times, one of whom be a screen adult, screening of all mentors who serve on a regular basis, and that the open door policy is observed. Mentors may not give gifts to children or youth without the knowledge of their parent or guardian. Gift giving should be done only on a group basis or for special occasions such as birthday, Christmas, confirmation, graduation. Gifts should be modest and appropriate for the occasion. Mentors must never serve as a financial resource. The general prohibition on one-to-one communications between church personnel and children and youth is relaxed in the context of mentoring relationships. However, mentors must obtain permission from the parent or guardian regarding the forms of communication a mentor may use in communicating with a mentee, which I believe we also have I don't know if we have a communication form, but we do have on for our communication chat, say you can opt in, opt out, and all those things. So it's important that we always communicate with parents and be in contact with them just as much as with the kids and all that. So I know there's times, I'm going to go into the transportation. I know there's times, particularly for student ministry, there are times that we are in situations where a student may need a ride. They'll come to altar, or they'll come to an event, and everybody is getting picked up except little Tommy, and little Tommy needs a ride home, and he's like, my mom, dad can't pick me up, and I get it. And I think those are times where we have to one, use our best judgment in those times, but it's always important that we communicate. Always, like when a kid asks me, hey, if I can get a ride, I need to talk to your parents first. I always, like, if I can bring in another adult with me, that's always ideal, but sometimes it can't happen. But always let another adult, particularly their parent for sure, and maybe another adult, said, hey, I'm taking this child home, and this is what we're going. If you have another student that can go with you, that's even better. Pairs of threes is always better. And so, and then drivers must be known to the designated adult leader of the event. If you are like the screened adult leader, which all of you are here, are screened. And when it says non-screened, it's meaning people that are, like if you have a parent or someone that is helping, but they're not necessarily a screened adult, they're not volunteers, those are people that would be considered as non-screened. They're adults, they're present, they're good people to have around, but you are the primary person to look to. Youth should never be able to drive to like off-site church activities or anything like that. So we just got to make sure that we're just protecting that. And trying to look at it.
About off-campus trips?
So we do trips, and with COVID right now, it's kind of in the air of what's going to happen. But we encourage. I try to get one adult for every 4 or 5 students. Usually it says one adult for every 8 students, but I like to be on the safe side of things and more adults that you can have. But it's important that we just understand our boundaries and understand where we're at and how we are supposed to interact with them. But obviously we want to play and we want to hang out. But there's always a time that we have to be the adults and we have to make our best judgments and I don't know what I'm trying to say, but we have to be adults in that. So I don't really have anything that we can, nothing in particular, everything else that we can read through. Online safety, I'll talk about that. I think online, particularly today, everything is social media, and I will say as leaders, just because I get it, where we want to post things, kids are watching, students are watching, parents are watching, and it's important that we are mindful of what we post and how we post online, and remember that. I know we live in a I feel like a social media battlefield sometimes, and we want to express what we think is right, and but we have to understand that we're modeling Jesus to people, and so we have to be mindful of what we post online. I'll read a couple of these things. Electronic communications with children, youth should be limited to information about program dates, activities, and should be made only by group emails or on the church's website or the church's public Facebook or the social media platforms of which the parents are aware and have been given consent or can access publicly. One-on-one communication with children and youth is generally prohibited. But I understand there's sometimes that happens, right? You have to, particularly for youth, you're having to reach out to them. You haven't seen Courtney in a while. you're going to shoot her a text, you know. But if there are extenuating circumstances that require one-on-one communication with a child or youth, the communication should be made via email or text on which the parent or legal guardian is copied. Church personnel should not friend or otherwise initiate one-to-one communications or connections with any unrelated youth or child on Facebook or similar social media site or platform, or tag any photograph of a participating child or youth on Facebook. We do have a photo, an agreement that we want all of our children and youth to sign. I will say it is difficult to get that done all the time, but we have it online, so it's very accessible. I think whenever parents sign their waivers for like any type of trips or for their medical release forms, it's right there. It's just a click of a button, and it should be pretty easy. But we just always want to be mindful of our students. Obviously, you know your students, you know your kids the best, you know their parents. So to me, that's the best way to look at it. But we also have to be aware that there are families that they can't have that information posted online. And so, yeah, I don't know if
Great. So we're just about wrapping up. I wanted to go over a few more things, and I'm going to backtrack just a little bit to page 6. A couple just general rules. We like the best that we can to try to do the 2 adult rule, to have 2 non-related adults, or at least 1 screened and 1 not. I know that doesn't always happen, but if possible, that's a great opportunity to have 2, even adult and a youth helper. We're all about transparency, right? So we want that open door, that open window, here we are, we're in the court, we want to be visible. We don't want to put ourselves ever in a position where we're with one-on-one with a youth, one-on-one with a child, and there's nobody to have your back for that, right? We want to make sure that we're really, really offering that transparency to the parents, to transparency to the church, that we are not, putting ourselves or the kids at risk by being the only adult or being the only person in the room with the child. So just always be really aware of that. We also have a 3-year rule that we like our volunteers to at least be 3 years older than who they're mentoring or who they're working with. And again, if that's not possible, pair up with somebody who can be the best that you can. Also, we do like for our volunteers to be attendants or a part of our church for at least 6 months. We want to know that they're dedicated to this program and they love First Church before inviting them on to work with our children and youth. And that's something that I think Chris and I have, we have to be cautious of, because again, as I mentioned, somebody says they want to volunteer and we say like, okay, great, because we're so desperate for volunteers. But so Chris and I are really trying to follow that. Is it somebody who's been here and not just somebody who showed up who wants to work with our children and youth? So, and then of course that open window and door policy, we want to have those window shades open. We want to have the doors open. I know in years past we've come into conflict and there's much discussion about, we also want to be safe, right? I know in the children's building, we actually like to keep the doors locked, right, with the idea of intruders or, and of course, Stoneman Douglas is always very, very fresh in our mind. So it's kind of working through those conflicts of, okay, am I transparent, but also in a safe setting. So a lot of times in children's ministry, we have the doors open, but they're locked. So if we need to just shut that door, we don't have to think twice that it's locked from the outside. That's not always possible, but if the door is shut and locked, maybe think about making sure the screen is open, or meeting in an outside area, meeting in a place with other people. I know many of you now are meeting at people's homes with the families there. Awesome, great. That gives you even more accountability of when you're working with students and youth. Also, let's jump to page 11. We feel like it's important to at least bring it to our attention. We've been pretty fortunate here so far. But if you are ever working with students or youth that you feel like there's some abuse going on, whether it's physical or mental, please, it is absolutely your right and duty to report that. There is an 800 number that's listed here in your packet. If for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable coming to Chris and I, we are not above you going above us if you need to. But the biggest thing is don't be silent, right? Make sure that you're speaking up, either mentioning it to Chris and I, mentioning it to Pastor Vidalis, making a call, anonymous call to that phone number. We always want to make sure that the kids and the youth are best protected the best that we can. And certainly, even if it was reported to Chris and I, we would take it to higher authorities to make sure that it was dealt with properly. Don't feel like that's something that you need to fix or solve on your own. Also, if there is an incident, it happens a lot in children's ministry, but also in youth ministry, where a child gets hurt under your care, we just want to make sure, again, that you're being really transparent with that. Right online, it's an incident report. That does not mean that anyone is in trouble or you get like a check mark by your name. We just want to make documentation of it. What happened? Why did it happen? Oh, little Johnny was out on the playground and fell, and he bumped his head, and we had to put some ice on it, and we'd let mom know. Well, we just want to keep track of that. So if you have a situation with a child or youth where they get hurt or something happens under your care, please bring that to the attention of Chris and I, make an incident report online, just so we can work through it the proper way. Again, not meaning that anyone's in trouble, but we have to document it. If anything serious came down the road, we can at least say we went through the correct procedures. Sure.
So I know also in student ministry, confidentiality, we want students to feel safe, that they can come talk to us, but obviously they have to understand that there is there's only so far that we can keep confidential, right? So if there's a student that comes to you and says, I'm hurting myself, I want to hurt somebody, or somebody's hurting them, we have to report it. And she already went through all that, but I just want to make sure that's just understood. Confidentiality, yes, we want students to feel safe to talk to you, but part of keeping them safe as well is reporting if there is an issue in that. So I just want to make sure, because I know I've had to deal with that before. So.
Okay, in closing, just as a few reminders, the only thing that we really ask that you fill out, for those of you who are here on campus, is you can do it right on that hard copy, or you can go and do it online, is that covenant statement, just saying that you participated in today's meeting. If you are watching online, as soon as Chris closes us in prayer and we finish this meeting, if you could go to that resources, volunteer forms, and it's number 3, which is the participation statement. That's what you're going to fill out and submit that you have indeed watched this video. If you have already filled out the application with us, you don't need to do that again. We already have it on file. And then hold off on doing the background check just so that we can make sure that you're not up to date already. There's no sense in submitting it again if you don't have to. And the background check is only for our volunteers that are 18 and older. So if you're not 18 yet, then the background check is not required of you yet until you're 18. And I think that is it. Anything that I'm missing? Always feel free to reach out to Chris and I with any questions, concerns. Like I said, we're so thankful for you. These programs cannot run without you guys. They just can't, and you bring so much life to them and to us. And we just thank you for your serving hearts and all that you do for these ministries, these kids. I have 3 in the program, and I can tell you firsthand that the love that's poured into them, it makes a difference. It makes a difference, a big difference. So thank you.
Does anybody have any questions here? No? We're good? Anybody online? Have any questions? You can always text us, let us know. I don't think, I will say that I know sometimes leaders, if you're a new leader, it can be a little overwhelming and be a little time in this. And it's a challenging time. I think for all of us, we're still trying to figure things out. But your role is extremely important. So I just want everybody online, if you're watching this, if you're serving as children, you're serving youth, is very important. Isa, what you're doing is important. And so we're glad you're here. All right? So let's pray. Dear Lord, God, thank you for all that you do. God, thank you for, God, that you just provided over and over and a way for us to be able to do your ministry and to serve your kingdom by God, first of all, just sharing the gospel and being able to dive into your word and disciple one another. God, we're so grateful for the opportunity that we can have and the freedom that we have as a church to be able to proclaim your name and to worship and gather together. But God, also, you've given us an opportunity to be the hands and feet to add the outside of the walls of this church. And so, God, everywhere we walk and everywhere we go as leaders and as volunteers, and God, we are the hands and feet of the church, the Big C Church. God, we have something to offer, and so God, I pray that we just continually remind ourselves that God, without you, we are nothing, but God, with you, we can do incredible things. So God, we pray that you just continue to equip us, that you continue to move in our lives, and God, may our lives be a reflection of who you are, and that we can continue to be the gospel to those that need the gospel, God. We love you, and we trust you in your name. Amen. All right. Thank you, guys.